Namaskar. I am in receipt of two important publications related to Oriental learning or Indology in general and Sanskrit studies, Indian history, culture, and modern Sanskrit literature in particular. They are valuable additions to my personal library. The first volume is Remembering Sri Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar, Life and Legacy. It's a big volume covering about 450 pages and produced out of dedication, love, and devotion for the doyen of Sanskrit studies and Indological studies in India, Sir Ramkrishna Gopal Bhandarkar. The chief editor of the volume is Professor K. Paddayya, a well-known scholar of ancient Indian history, archaeology, and the editorial team includes other illustrious names: Professor Prasad Joshi, Professor Kulkarni, Professor Sonal Kulkarni Joshi, Shahida Ansari, and Satish S. Nayak. The volume has been published by Aryan Books International, New Delhi. It's a recent publication and priced, so far as I could read, 2,995. The volume is dedicated to the memory of E.I. Howard, the first effective director of public instructions, who worked between 1856 to 1867 and set the tone for higher education in Bombay Presidency, now called Mumbai, and who promoted the educational interest of R.G. Bhandarkar. There is a glorious line of close associates of Sir Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar, who worked hard to preserve his memories, and they have been rightly remembered because of their sentimental involvement in this endeavor. They are well-known names whenever Sir Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar is talked about: Dwarkanath Govind Vedya, Srinivas Narayan Karnataki. They are his biographers. I have gone through the biography by Srinivas Narayan Karnataki. It's very useful to know a great personality, RGB. Sripad Krishna Belvelkar, who played a key role in establishing the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, and felicitating Bhandarkar with a splendid felicitation volume on his 80th birthday. Then Narayan Bapuji Udgikar, he was the person who initiated the Mahabharata project, and I think had edited one of the Parvans. He is remembered here for lovingly assembling Bhandarkar's widely scattered writings and carefully editing them in 4 volumes as the collected works of Sir R.G. Bhandarkar, which were published between 1927 to 1933. And of course, last but not the least, R.N. Dandekar, one of the towering scholars of 20th century. He is remembered here for organizing a symposium in 1975 on the occasion of 50th death anniversary of R.G. Bhandarkar. And he also published the proceedings of the symposium under the title Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar as an Indologist. So this is the background, and this volume has come out as proceedings of one-day seminar held at Deccan College jointly by the Institute, that is Deccan College of Postgraduate Studies and Research University, and its Alumni Association on 30th April 2025. Only 6 months have passed after the symposium, and the editors, particularly Professor K. Paddayya, they are so devoted to the cause, and they have worked day and night perhaps to bring out the publication, that within 6 months after the symposium, this excellent volume has come out, and it's a befitting tribute on the death centenary of Professor Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar. So this is a befitting death centenary tribute to the memory of the towering personality that RGB definitely was. He shaped the destiny of Indological studies. He was one of the makers of nation. Professor K. Paddayya especially must be congratulated for this remarkable production. There's no need to say that stalwarts like Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar, they do not simply live in the era, they make an era. Their lives and deeds become epoch making. I would discuss some of the well known facts about Professor Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar, which I had noted otherwise for my work on Pandits in modern India. Only a few excerpts from my work. Dr. Sir Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar was one of the harbingers of intellectual revival in India. He initiated the trail of scientific and critical study of Sanskrit texts and the ancient Indian history. He was a multifaceted academician, and with extraordinary achievements in various areas such as Sanskrit grammar and philosophy, history and culture, philology, religion, and several other fields. He was held in high esteem even by the Western scholars. Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, which was founded on 6 July 1917, on the occasion of his 81st birthday by his students, colleagues, and admirers, is a rare example of an institute of international fame founded to commemorate a scholar in his own lifetime, and has truly remained a living monument of Sir Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar. Out of his intense love for Sanskrit, he wrote an article. Bhandarkar wrote an article when he was just a student. The article was titled Conqueror's Conqueror, which was published in Native Opinion. In this article, Bhandarkar, who was just a boy at that time, suggested that the discovery of the hidden treasure of Sanskrit would make India the conqueror's conqueror. After passing his MA in first rank in 1864, Bhandarkar was appointed as the headmaster of the government high schools in Hyderabad and Ratnagiri, where he introduced the study of Sanskrit. He brought out the first book of Sanskrit and the second book of Sanskrit. Incidentally, these two grammar books by Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar, they almost changed the whole scenario of teaching of Sanskrit Vyakaran. And I remember when I was just a child of 5 years, I saw these two books in our house. My father being a Sanskrit teacher, and he passed his Sanskrit examinations privately. So he used to study Sanskrit grammar through these two volumes, of course through Hindi medium, because their Hindi translations were available all over the northern India. संस्कृत व्याकरण की प्रथम पुस्तक, संस्कृत व्याकरण की द्वितीय पुस्तक. So these two books in Hindi translations of Bhandarkar's grammar reader, they were available and they were being consulted all around the country, perhaps all around the northern India, and of course in Maharashtra and Gujarat. So these two publications have become immortal, and they have continued to be most useful teaching and learning kit for studying Sanskrit language and grammar. Subsequently, Bhandarkar joined the Elphinstone College, Bombay. Bueller was serving as professor of Sanskrit in this college. Then, when he went to England in 1869, and he did not join his original post of professor at Elphinstone, Bhandarkar served as professor for some time in his place. He replaced Bueller. But when the vacancy was to be filled permanently in 1872, Dr. Peterson was arbitrarily appointed on this post, completely ignoring Dr. Bhandarkar's claims. There was a lot of hue and cry. I won't go into the history, and injustice was done to Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar. And Keelhorn was just a young man at that time. Bhandarkar being such a senior and almost a revered scholar by that time, he was ignored. Then Bhandarkar was teaching at Deccan College, which was a prestigious, one of the premier educational institutions of India. From 1864, he was teaching at Deccan. He then became professor of Oriental Studies in Deccan College, of course at Pune. Later, Dr. Bhandarkar was appointed professor of Sanskrit at Pune College and worked here till 1893. K.T. Telang, L.R. Vaidya, G.H. Deshmukh, V.S. Apte, along with his own illustrious son, Devdutt Bhandarkar, were his students. A teacher is known by the line of his disciples. Bhandarkar produced such great scholars under his tutorship. Then he produced an immortal work, Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and minor religious systems. Of course, Dandekar at several places doesn't agree with him, and we may also not agree with him, but it was a pioneer work at that time. And even in the scholarly world globally, this work was regarded of high value, and it is treated as his magnum opus. He wrote it at the age of 25 when he was slowly losing his eyesight. The critical edition of Bhavuti's Malti Madhavam, prepared by Dr. Bhandarkar, evinces his patience and sincerity with which he collected the manuscript material. Dr. Bhandarkar made valuable contributions to the study of manuscriptology and Indian manuscripts, Indian history, of course, and culture. He became a celebrated name all across the world as a Sanskrit scholar and a scholar of Indology. He will always be remembered for his substantial contribution to various fields of Indology, for his unbiased and critical approach, and for his unique personality, embodying a blend of rationality with spirituality. Professor Keelhorn, who was his competitor said about him. He was one of the greatest Sanskrit scholars India has produced in modern times. Rabindranath Tagore and Silma Levi paid visits to his house in 1923, 2 years before his death. He was made a member of Royal Asiatic Society, London, in 1874, and also the German Oriental Society. Several honors are there. Buehler cited his work as the best specimen of Indo-Aryan research in his Encyclopedia of Indo-Aryan Research. Normally, the Westerners, out of their ego, they do not recognize the worth of Indian scholars. Only Bhandarkar, to a great extent, became an exception because he was such a towering personality amongst the scholars of his time all around the world. So, it is very much in order of things that Bhandarkar is remembered again and again, and especially on his death centenary, such a befitting tribute is paid to him. As a man of goodwill, Bhandarkar always stood for a noble cause. There is one episode from Bhandarkar's life which is hardly remembered in the world of scholars, Indological world, but I very much cite it whenever I speak about Gandhi. I remember Bhandarkar. So, because this episode may not be found in such volumes or in the studies on Bhandarkar, otherwise, Mahatma Gandhi was simply overwhelmed by his kindness. Tilak had advised Gandhi return from South Africa. He was just a young man and he was seeking the supporters of Indian community, influential persons from India for his cause at South Africa. He wanted to draw the attention of migrant Indians in South Africa and to help, to seek his help, to seek the help of Indian community in his mission. So he came to Pune. He met Tilak. Tilak advised Gandhi to meet Bhandarkar. Gandhi was touring the whole country, and in the course of his visits, he came to Pune. And naturally, Tilak was a well known personality as a Congress leader. So, Tilak, when Gandhi sought his help and advice and his support, he just said, "You go and meet Bhandarkar, RGB." Then Gandhi, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, as a young man, went to the house of Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar. I will read out the lines from my autobiography by Gandhi. First, I met Lokmanya Tilak. He said, "There can be no difference of opinion on the South African question, but you must have a non-party man for your president. Meet Professor Bhandarkar. He has been taking no part of late in any public movement, but this question might possibly draw him out. See him and let me know what he says." Tilak and Bhandarkar vehemently differed with each other. They were friends, but there were differences, and often there were hot arguments. I won't go into the history of it, but even Tilak said that go and meet Bhandarkar and then tell me what he says. So Gandhi went to Bhandarkar's house. And then he said, I will again read out from his autobiography. Dr. Bhandarkar received me with warmth of a father. It was noon when I called on him. The very fact that I was busy seeing people at this hour appealed greatly to this indefatigable savant. Now look how Gandhi is impressed to see Bhandarkar. Any old person, Bhandarkar is very old. Gandhi is not so much known. Of course, his Satyagraha movement at South Africa created a furor all around the world. So that way he is known. But Bhandarkar is a great person, and any old person would have complained that you are coming at a time when I should have been taking a nap. But on the contrary, Bhandarkar is appreciating that this young man is working at this hour also. The very fact that I was busy seeing people at this hour appealed greatly to this indefatigable man, indefatigable Sama, and my insistence on a non-party man for the president of the meeting had his ready approval. After he heard me out, he said, and these are the words of Bhandarkar, he must have spoken to Gandhi, as remembered by Gandhi. Anyone will tell you that I do not take part in politics, but I cannot refuse you. Your case is so strong and your industry is so admirable that I cannot decline to take part in your meeting. You did well in consulting Tilak and Gokhale. Gokhale was his guru, Gandhi's. Please tell them that I will be glad to preside over the meeting to be held under the joint auspices of two sabhas. You need not have the time of meeting from me. Any time will suit them. Any time that suits them will suit me. Such a readiness for a noble cause. And how two great people meet, how they impress each other. So this is the episode I always remember when I remember Bhandarkar, and when I especially remember Gandhi. So if we talk about Bhandarkar, I can talk for hours and hours. So much to be said about him. But coming back to the volume, which is in my hand, Professor Paddayya has given a brief life sketch of Professor Bhandarkar in the beginning. Then there is an introduction by K. Paddayya. Then the volume is divided into three sections. The first section is devoted to general estimates. So it is all about intimate memories of the admirers, disciples, and other scholars with regard to Dr. Bhandarkar. The second section is devoted to Sanskrit and philological studies, and the third section is devoted to historical, socio-religious, and archaeological studies. Bhandarkar, the whole focus, of course, is on RGB, or Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar, but various facets of Indological studies and problems of Oriental learning, they have been dealt with. There are 24 papers, all in all, by renowned scholars. And there is a paper in the beginning, in the first section, by Madhav M. Deshpande, titled The Orientalism, Debate and Responses from the Orient, Contributions of Sir Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar. It's an important discussion on the problems of Oriental studies and decolonizing Oriental studies and all the controversies that have been raising about the word Orient and Oriental learning. I remember Daya Krishna, he was one of the modern philosophers of India, and we used to have personal meetings with him. So he used to say that so far the West has been telling us about us. Now it is time for us to tell the West about them, how we estimate them. But now I feel that instead of telling the West how we estimate them, we first should investigate upon what the Westerners have been saying about us and critique it, and then assess ourselves. So this is what the whole career and whole the corpus of literature which Bhandarkar has produced emphasizes over. Madhav Deshpande says that the impact of Indian publications continuing this multi-directional investigation, the impact of Western publications was continuing, and these studies, this impact of these studies is seen in the subaltern studies and post-colonial studies of Indian subcontinent. He mentions Edward Said, and in these critical studies of Orientalism, primarily Western scholars are talking amongst themselves about Western approaches to the Orient. So the Orient is passive. He is just a subject. He is just a object of study. The voice of Orient is rarely heard in these discussions. In these studies, the agency of Orientalism is put squarely on the shoulders of Western scholars and colonial administrators, and the Oriental is generally perceived as the meek recipient of this Western or colonial dispensation with no agency of his own. Then Bhandarkar comes into the focus, and he could change the scenario to a bit because of his ceaseless efforts in reorganizing the whole educational system and giving a pattern of Indological studies, which is known as Bhandarkar's method. Madhav Deshpande remembers Bal Shastri Jamkhedkar, who is generally considered to be the first Brahmin promoter of modern education in the vernacular languages. So how the whole educational system is revolutionized in Maharashtra and Pune because of the endeavors of these stalwarts, Jamkhedkar, then Tilak, Bhaudaji Lad, Kashinath Trambak Telang, Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar, of course, joins this line, and Mahadev Govind Ranade was with him. So they constitute a generation of modern Brahmins that dominated the field of modern historical and ethnological studies in the second half of the 19th century and trained the later generations of native scholars like Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Vishnu Shastri Chiplunkar, Mahadev, Moreshwar Kunte, etc., etc. Chiplunkar is also taken into consideration. And Deshpande says that the collapse of distance between the object of study and the scholar, especially in the heat of the rising nationalist sentiment, has had serious consequences in the shaping of historical scholarship in succeeding decades. Then, coming back to the Orientalism debate, he says that while it is appropriate for Western scholars to look at the causes and forms of Western Orientalism and its impact on the Orient, we need not look at the recipients of this Western Orientalism in the Orient as passive receivers. The Oriental recipients have molded the Orientalism to their own purposes, and Bhandarkar largely shaped the frame of this innovative agency. So, this is an important statement about Bhandarkar as an Indologist or as an Orientologist. And we can now shape the Orientology. It may not be a degraded term or a despised term now. And we will tell the West what Orientology actually should mean. This is what I understand from the whole discussion. Then there is equally important paper discussing the same issue, Sir IRGB, an Indologist or an Orientalist by K.M. Shrimali. Then there are papers by Professor Uma Vedya on Bhandarkar's career and contributions, by Avanish Patil on Bhandarkar's framework of social reform, by Dilip S. Jog on R.G. Bhandarkar and Prarthana Samaj, because he was one of the founders of Prarthana Samaj, a great institution. Bhandarkar was a great social reformer. And my paper, of course, is also there, Vedic Foundations of Natya Shastra and Ancient Indian Theatre. Then C. Rajendran, a well-known scholar of grammar and Alankar Shastra, literary theory, he has written a paper on uses of compounds in Sanskrit. Panini and his commentators in Mahim Bhatta's perception, because Vyakaran is one of the areas where Bhandarkar has contributed substantially. So, these studies not only make an assessment of Bhandarkar, they also extend the frontiers of Indological research. And there is an interesting paper by N.K. Sundareswaran, who has been working perhaps, so far as I remember, in Calicut University, a well-known professor of Sanskrit, the Sulbha Janak dialogue in the Mahabharata, a forgotten chapter in the history of Indian eristics. It's a very interesting episode in the Mahabharata, the Sulbha Janak Samvada, and there is one scholar in Pune itself, Professor Mangala Chinchore, who has produced a very extensive paper on this problem of Sulbha Janak Samvada, very brilliant analysis of the whole episode. Then Arindam Chakravarti from Hawaii University, a well-known philosopher of our times, he has also discussed this episode in one of his papers, and that paper is published in the volume Mahabharata Now, edited by Arindam himself. I was one of the participants of the seminar, the proceedings of which this volume is comprised of. So I know these discussions about Sulbha Janak Samvada, and because I myself have worked on the problem, so this episode can be discussed and discussed endlessly, because it is so profound in itself, and it is so significant. It is symbolic, psychological, and philosophical. But there's no time to go into the details. There are papers by other great scholars like Debarchana Sarkar on numerograms or Bhuta Sankhya, by Jayashree, and other scholars. She writes on Bhandarkar's review of Aitreya Brahman by Martin Haag. Martin Haag was a contemporary scholar living in Pune itself. His Aitreya Brahman is well known. Bhandarkar produced excellent reviews of many publications during his own times. Sri Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar, a Sanskrit grammarian of 19th century. This is the article by Prasad Joshi and Shilpa Sumant. And then Panchanan Mohanty has written on contributions to the comparative and historical study of Indo-Aryan languages by Bhandarkar, as a study of his Wilson Philosophical Lectures. Wilson Philosophical Lectures by Bhandarkar, they are very well known. And in the third section, devoted to socio-religious and archaeological studies, there are papers related to ancient Indian history and discussing Bhandarkar's approach to various historical issues by R. Mahalakshmi, by Alok Parashar Sen, by Kumkum Rai, She writes on the threefold tyranny, Bhandarkar's vision of society and social history. Then A.P. Jamkhedkar, who is a well-known scholar of archaeology and ancient Indian history, apropos Vaishnavism, Shaivism, and minor religious systems by Professor R.G. Bhandarkar. Then Christopher Edholm has written a paper on Vedic Rudra, from Bhandarkar's study on Shaivism to recent publications. And then an appraisal of structural stupa in the Maharashtra, paper by Reshma Sawant and Gurudas Shete. And there are papers on the contribution of Bhandarkar to epigraphical studies, on Buddhist remains in Andhra Desha, and Bhandarkar's creation of vital research resource manuscript collection by Srinand Bapat and Amrita Natu. Last but not the least, there is a valuable contribution again by Professor K. Paddayya, titled R.G. Bhandarkar as a pioneer exponent of holistic and scientific methodology and an advocate of educational idealism, universal humanism, and higher spiritualism. Because Bhandarkar, as I could understood him, was a spiritual personality. He was a social reformer, greatest of the scholars of his times, one of the greatest scholars of his times. But he was a seeker of truth, and he was a devotee of God. And there are descriptions how he was involved in the prarthanas, how he used to sing bhajans even. And Dharmananda Kosambi, the way he made the careers of many of his students, the way he looked after them. So the way Dharmananda Kosambi remembers him in his Nivedan autobiography. So this volume has very good illustrations. They almost bring out the echoes of those days. Bhandarkar's ancestral house, then his home, which he created, the house he built in Pune, then his library, and his days in the Deccan College at Pune. So all these photographs and illustrations are there. The photo of his Sangamashram residence, and Bhandarkar with many other luminaries of his times. And this volume, of course, is one of the purposeful publications that have been brought out recently. Second publication which I have in my hands is this book titled Shri Yeshu Christ Mahatmyam Jan Muir Pranitam Mahakavyam Samikshatmika Vimrashti. It is authored by Dr. Saumyajit Sen, a young scholar from West Bengal. It is heartening to note that a very good team of young scholars is coming up in West Bengal. They are very enthusiastic and they are free from all the biases and prejudices of the older generation. They are working ceaselessly for the cause of Sanskrit. Dr. Saumyajit Sen, MA Gold Medalist, MPhil and PhD, is an assistant professor in the Department of Sanskrit, Cooch Behar, Panchanan, Burma University, Cooch Behar, West Bengal. The volume has been published by Pratibha Prakashan, New Delhi, this year only, 2025. Dr. Saumyajit Sen serves as, I have told this, he received Dr. Saumyajit Sen received his doctorate from Jadavpur University, Kolkata, and he wrote his dissertation on John Muir's seminal contribution to Sanskrit Christian literature, a domain in which Dr. Sen stands among the pioneer exponents now, even as a young scholar. This is his area. He has been consistently working in this area. He is a recipient of multiple gold medals from Jadavpur University, Kolkata University of Calcutta, Central Sanskrit University also, and has consistently demonstrated academic excellence. His oeuvre encompasses one monograph, two edited volumes, and more than 35 research papers published in refereed journals and edited collections of repute. His erudition has secured him invitations to deliver lectures all over the academic institutions in India and abroad, of course. He was awarded a prestigious major research project by Indian Council of Social Research, New Delhi in 2023. The blurb of this volume, I don't know who wrote it because the name of the author is not given, but it makes tall claims about John Muir and his epic poem in Sanskrit. They do not fully match with the estimate of Saumyajit Sen himself of the epic poem by John Muir. The work basically discusses the epic poem of John Muir in Sanskrit, Sri Yeshu Christ Mahatmyam, and the blurb says, in the confluence of sacred vision and poetic artistry lies Sri Yeshu Christ Mahatmyam, a Mahakavya unlike any other, where the devotional fervor of Christianity is clothed in the timeless grandeur of Sanskrit Kavya. This book offers a profound and meticulous exploration of John Muir's unique creation, unfolding its intricate verses. There is no intricacy in the verses. Simple Anustuk, very simple Anustuk. About Yeshu Mahatmya, subtle symbolism, and the extraordinary fusion of Eastern poetics with Western theology. Through critical analysis and sensitive interpretation, the study demonstrates how Mahakavya elevates a theological narrative into the realm of classical Sanskrit literature, trying upon the conventions of Mahakavya, yet infusing them with a new spiritual message. It highlights Muir's poetic craftsmanship, the resonance of Sanskritic idioms, and the ways in which biblical themes find expression in Kavya aesthetics. More than a critical appraisal, this work serves as a window into the dialogue of civilizations, revealing how Sanskrit became a medium for theological encounter and intercultural creativity. It invites readers to rediscover the majesty of Sanskrit literature while witnessing its surprising role as a bridge between traditions, faiths, and literary words. I can agree about Saumyajit Sen, whatever the blurb says about Saumyajit Sen, I am perfectly comfortable with it. But about the Yeshu Christ Mahatmyam, whatever the blurb says, even it doesn't match with Saumyajit's own analysis of this Mahakavya. Completely it doesn't match. So I'll come to it. So, but anyway, this is another issue. John Muir is one of the great scholars of 19th century as an Indologist and as a Sanskrit scholar also. He is respectable and he belongs to Scotland. He was born in Glasgow. From my own experience, he was a Scottish. So from my own experience, I know that Scottish people are different from the Britishers. And he was different from the Britishers that way. I have spent some time in Scotland also. I have visited Glasgow University, where John Muir also worked for some time, and I can say that Scottish people and Scottish scholars are a bit different from the British scholars, and British people also. They are more loving and lovable and perhaps more sympathetic to India and the Indians. Then John Muir was born in 1810 at Glasgow. He worked for some time in Glasgow University, then joined the East India Company, East India Company Training College at Haileybury. Then joined, he came to India and served in different capacities. He was officer in various capacities under East India Company and worked at several places in India. He worked at Fort William College also at Kolkata, and then he retired in 1842-43, returned to Scotland, but then he came back. He was called and came back to India as president of Victoria Mahavidyalaya, Victoria College or Queen's College at Varanasi, and he contributed a lot to strengthening Sanskrit education in his own way at Queen's College. And then for some years he was in India again. He worked at Azamgarh, Gorakhpur and Delhi in various capacities. And then again he retired and returned to Edinburgh, Scotland in 1853. He was honored as DCL by Oxford University, LLD by Edinburgh University, and SCIE by the government. He passed away in 1882. John Muir bore a facile pen and he used to write verses in Sanskrit. Even otherwise, his orders in Sanskrit at Sanskrit University, which was Queen's College, they are known, and he used to write in Sanskrit. He was a versifier that way, may not be a great poet, and he could understand Sanskrit classics very well. So he created a Mahakavya, an epic poem. The poem is not divided into sargas but into adhyayas like Gita. John Muir has produced as many as 13 works in Sanskrit. He has written in prose and he has written in poetry, and he has produced philosophical works also. So 2 chapters of this thesis, because it's a book based on the thesis by Saumyajit Sen. So two of the first chapters are devoted to modern Sanskrit literature. Then the third chapter discusses Krishna Dharma Mashtitya Prachya Paschatya Vidvadbir Virachitani Maulik Sanskrit Kavyani. Original Sanskrit writings on Christian religion and theology. And there is a immense literature, huge quantum of literature on Christianity in Sanskrit. Of course, we know many of such writings, and P.C. Devasya's epic poem, Yishu Charitam. Many Indians have written on Christian religion and theology. And a traditional Pandit of Kashi, Nilkant Shastri Gore, who entered the ferocious debates with Christian fathers when they were writing monographs to propagate Christianity. So Rogerio wrote a Roman Catholic Brahman Catholic Samvada in Sanskrit, and other Pandits, they produced rejoinders to such writings. So this was a series of debates in Sanskrit on Christianity, and Nilkant Shastri Gore was joined on behalf of the traditional Pandits, but later on he himself was converted to Christianity and he became a devout Christian, Father Gore. This is another history. But then a lot of literature, some of the writings have been referred by Saumyajit Sen, but many have been omitted, and still there is a scope to research on the problem, how much literature now, many of the writings have been lost also, because some Mirzapur press, it is publishing those books, monographs in Sanskrit by Western scholars on Christianity, and all of them may not be available now. But in the third chapter, titled Sanskrit Christiya Sahityam, Saumyajit Sen has introduced several Mahakavyas, Khandakavyas, Gadyakavyas, and translated literature and Prashasti Kavyas and miscellaneous writings in Sanskrit about Christianity. And I may not go into the numbers. Fourth chapter is devoted to John Muir as a creative writer in Sanskrit, and his whole career as a creative writer, and the works he has produced in Sanskrit. Paul Charitram is another poem, epic poem by John Muir. It is on Saint Paul, who was the chief disciple of Yeshu or Christ. Then Ishwarokta Shastra Dhara, Nistarg Marg Deepika. He uses the word Nistar for salvation. Papa Mochini Yathartho Paya Pradarshanam. This is another work by John Muir. Mat Pariksha is a well-known work. It was written to examine the various sects under Hinduism also, and to establish, of course, Christian religion. Then Sharma Paddhati, he uses the word Sharma for happiness. So the path for happiness. The title is translated as Sharma Paddhati, and the work is in Sanskrit. So as many as 13 volumes in Sanskrit by John Muir. Some of them are poems, some of them are philosophical works, some of them are critical works. Their account has been given by Saumyajit Sen in the 4th chapter. In the 5th chapter, a critical study of Yeshu Krishna Mahatmya has been produced. And the Yeshu Krishna Mahatmya Mahakavya has been produced. The Mahakavya has been studied from various angles: Alankara, Riti, Guna, diction, style, impact of earlier poets. He is influenced by Kalidasa to some extent, and meters. I think throughout it uses Anushtup. John Muir has written in Upjati meter also, but mostly he writes in Anushtup. So the various instructions about Mahakavya by the masters of literary theory in the Mahakavya Lakshana, they are not followed by John Muir. Sargante Chanda Parivartanam, to change the meter at the end. This perhaps he has not followed. And each adhyaya or each sarga doesn't have a different meter. So mostly there is Anushtup. But his language is flawless. He uses lit lakara mostly because it is the story of ancient times he is narrating. And he has created the perspective as a devotee of Christianity. Then Saumyajit Sen discusses Dharma Tattva Mimamsa and a complete assessment of John Muir. There are some points which I wanted to draw attention of. There is a book, Papa Mochini Yatharthopaya Pradarshanam by John Muir. It discusses the problem whether Ganga can wash away the sins. John Muir says that Ganga cannot now wash away the sins. Ganga is polluted, so it cannot wash the sins. Faith in Christianity will wash the sins. So, Gangayam Snana Mahatmyam Asmakam Shastreshu Bahutraiva Kashate Yatha Prakhyate Adi Shankaracharya Pranite Ganga Stotre. The language of Saumyajit Sen is very facile and perspicuous. It's a pleasure to read his Sanskrit, and I have heard him speaking in Sanskrit also. So, Saumyajit Sen says that Parantu Gachata Samayena Gangaya Pavitram Jalam Dushitam Abhat Ityasyapi Varnana na Shastreshveva Avapyate यथा द्वादशशतकस्य श्रीधरदास प्रणीत द्वादशशतकस्य श्रीधरदास प्रणीते सदुक्तिकरणामृते. He says that John Muir discusses the pollution in Ganga. Since Ganga is polluted, therefore it cannot wash away the sins now. Therefore, believe in Christianity, belief will remove your sins. This is the message of Papamochani Yatharthopaya Pradarshanam. This is the real upaya for washing away the sins. And Saumyajit says that Ganga was polluted earlier also, even in 10th, 11th century also, because Sadukti Karnamrit. He says that Sridhar Das Pranite Sadukti Karnamrate. Sadukti Karnamrit is not authored by Sridhar Das. Sridhar Das has compiled this anthology, Sadukti Karnamrit. So young scholars should be a little bit more careful about the uses of words. Pranita would not normally mean edited or compiled. Sadukti Karnamrit is a compilation or an anthology. Anyway, so he says that Sridhar Das Pranite Sadukti Karnamrate, there are stanzas discussing the pollution in Ganga. I opened the edition of Sadukti Karnamrata by Sridhar Das. I have edition of Sadukti Karnamrat by S.C. Banerjee, published from Pharma KL Mukhopadhyay from Kolkata. There are 10 stanzas about Ganga, but there I couldn't find the problem exactly, the problem of pollution in Ganga. There is 5 stanzas about Ganga, Ganga Prashasti, Ganga Stuti, then 5 stanzas about Ganga Mahatmyam, and Ganga is highly eulogized, and the pollution issue is not discussed. So, but that is another issue. Agreeing with John Muir on this issue is very difficult to agree with him. And Saumyajit Sen perhaps is agreeing with him. So there, at least I would not join issue with this young scholar. And because there is an inner contradiction in John Muir's hypothesis. Belief in Christianity will wash away your sins. Ganga will not wash away your sins because it is polluted. But a person having a bath in Ganga is a believer. He believes, he is devoted to Ganga. And he becomes pure by heart through his devotion to Ganga. So if you believe in belief, there is a concept of belief, and he translates this faith, not belief. So because of your faith, you can be free of sins. So because of if your faith elevates you and frees you from your sins, other religions who have the concept of faith or devotion, they would also lead to the same goal. So this narrowness of attitude, because of the missionary religion, Christianity based on crusading for religion and conversion, this leads to this narrowness of attitude and not properly appreciating the other faiths, and overlooking the perspective of the other religions and other faiths. I respect Christianity. Jesus was a great personality. Christianity is a great religion, but they should also understand the perspective of the other religions, which John Muir has failed. And all these works by Western scholars, European scholars in Sanskrit about Christianity are written with a kind of fervor and with a mission to propagate Christianity, but they have this narrow attitude. Saumyajit Sen, of course, has pointed out this issue. He is a hard critic also. He has criticized John Muir. I quite appreciate him. But at other points, all the perspective of John Muir should be examined in a holistic way. Ishwarokta Shastra Dhara is another work by John Muir on divine revelation, and it presents a brief outline of communication of God's will to man. It was published in 1846. Yeshu Krishna Mahatmyam was published in 1848. And Saumyajit Sen must be very much appreciated for getting the rare editions of these works. These works published almost 180 years back. Almost 2 centuries have passed after the publication of John Muir's works, and they are not available easily. And such an enormous literature, even by one person, John Muir, so much written in Sanskrit. Paul Charitram is also there, a short life of the Apostle Paul, with summary of Christian doctrines as unfolded in his epistles. It was published from Encyclopedia Press in 1849. Then Mat Pariksha created a lot of debate during those times, and it has several sections, and it contained an examination of diverse religions, consideration of the Hindu Shastras. It was published from Orphan Press, Mirzapur in 1852. So all these works have been examined by Saumyajit Sen in the 4th chapter of this thesis, and there is an interesting work by John Muir, Nutno Danto Dotsa. It's a very peculiar sandhi he has made. There is a Visandhi dosh here, so far as the Alankar Shastra goes. So if you split the work, Nutno Danto Dotsa, Nutna Udant Ud Utsaha, that will make Nutno Danto Dotsa, a very funny coinage. And the meaning is the fountain of water of fresh intelligence. Nutna Udant Ud Utsaha. Then Sharma Paddhati, the way of true happiness. Paramatmastava, a Christian hymn in Sanskrit verse, with Hindi translation, of course, in prose. Manasa Dharma Deepika is another work. Sri Vidya Chamatkarika is another work. And Ityas Deepika, a sketch of history of India. These are the works by John Muir. And I will end by reading some of the verses from Sri Yeshu Krishna Mahatmyam. Vishwasat kevalam yanti Krishtiyah papamochanam. No, these are verses by from the other work. Vishwasat kevalam yanti Krishtiyah papamochanam. Anyatraish dayatah kva sharanam doshinam bhavet. Tishthettuyo ratno anghassu Sri Krishnasyanugopisan. Narastha vyartha vishwasah kilvishahi svairna mokshate. विश्वासो वास्तवो यस्य कृष्टीयस्य च संततम करोत्यंघो घृणाम धर्म्यः कुकर्माणि च वर्जति, etc., etc. Saumyajit Sen has examined this epic poem from the various points of various categories of literary criticism, and his assessment about John Muir and his appreciation as well as critical appreciation is accurate that way. And he even agrees that John Muir was out to impress Hindu Pandits with his mastery of Sanskrit literature. And the mastery came easy to him, as many other Christian scholars and missionaries, because he could employ poor Hindu Pandits to find him references. This is the citation from Sitaram Goyal he has given, and almost agrees with Sitaram Goyal, because John Muir must have employed Pandits of Kashi to examine his own Sanskrit writings. All these Western scholars were taking a lot of help from the Sanskrit Pandits, H. Wilson, even other scholars, Monier Williams, and other stalwarts as well. And because they were in power, so they could use that power, and they could give token amounts also to the Pandits. In the end, I will read out some verses from John Muir's epic poem. नमस्ते जगतां कर्त्रे शासित्रे पालकाय च दयामयाय पुण्याय नमस्ते परमात्मने क्वते पवित्रता चिन्त्या क्वच पापिष्ठता मम तवाग्रे विनयं कर्तुं नार्होऽस्म्यङ्घो मलीयसः क्वते माहात्म्यमत्यन्तं क्वच मे तुच्छता विभो गुणांस्ते परमान् स्तोतुं ज्ञातुं वाप्यहमक्षमः परन्तु कोऽस्ति दीनानाम् आश्रयस्त्वां विनेश्वर त्वमेको दुर्दशां वेत्सि त्वमेकस्त्रातुमर्हसि, etc. So this is the concept of sin. The sin as imbued in the psyche. The concept in this way doesn't exist in our tradition, and we differ from the Christian people that way. We are not sinners that way. We are born out of bliss. Anandadev kalimani bhutani jayante. Anandam prayanti abhisamvishanti. Anando brahma. They are born out of sin. What to do? So they are always for washing their sins, and their prayers, their faith proceeds that way. And whole mankind is a sinner. The human being is a sinner. So he should wash out his sins. Christ will help him in washing his sins. So whole this perspective is there, and the devoutness, the firm belief and faith with which Muir has produced his writings must be appreciated, and his failure to appreciate the other's perspective, that also should be understood. So with this, I finished here. Thank you very much. Congratulations to this young scholar Saumyajit Sen, and again salutations to Professor K. Paddayya for producing the excellent volume on Bhandarkar. Thank you.